When Cao Cao marched south in 207 to destroy Liu Bei and Sun Quan, he was wary about potential attacks from behind. To avoid any interference, he summoned the influential Ma Teng to Yi, then Cao appointed him as a minister of the guards. He was effectively a hostage at the city, along with over 100 of his clansmen, which prevented his eldest son Ma Chao, who had assumed his troops, from invading Cao Cao's territories. Yan Xing was soon invited in and granted titles too, so his family was granted a residence in the imperial capital at Shou city. Although Han Sui was reluctant to do the same, he eventually agreed with Yan Xing, and so also sent his family to Shou as hostages. After the defeat at Red Cliffs, Cao Cao gave up on his idea of uniting the south and turned his attention to annex the western lands. The Yangtze River provided good natural defences against the Southern Alliance, so he decided the oblique approach through the mountains to the west was a safer option. Junior clerk in the Department of Granaries, Gao Ru, arrived to caution him concerning the roads to Hanzhong. Sending a great army west would give the appearance that we were attacking Liang province, so the panicked warlords will raise arms. If we secure Yu Fu Feng, Zuo Pingyi and Jing Zhao through non-military action, then it would be possible to gain safe access to Hanzhong. Cao Cao didn't listen and sent his forces west, presumably because he knew the Liang warlords would eventually revolt anyway, and he was willing to use this opportunity to draw them out. Around April in 211, Zhong Yao led an army towards Hanzhong to attack Xianglu, with Xie Haiyuan leading reinforcements from Heidong Commandery. The various Guanzhong warlords feared they were in danger, as Tao's armies would pass by them on the way. They planned to start a rebellion, where Ma Chao even told Han Sui, "Zhong Yao ordered me to harm you, so from this I know the people east of Tong Pass cannot be trusted. I hereby abandon my father, and I'm willing to consider you as my father. You should abandon your son and treat me like your son." Yan Xing advised Han Sui not to cooperate with Ma Chao, but he still agreed to the alliance. As soon as Zhong Yao's army set foot into the region, the Guanzhong Coalition gathered under the leadership of Ma Chao and Han Sui. The coalition from the west of Tong Pass rebelled against the Han Imperial Court, and was led by the warlords Hu Xuan, Cheng Yin, Yang Xiu, Li Kan, Zhang Heng, Liang Xing, Cheng Yi, and Ma Wan. The estimated 100,000 warriors of Liang were a mixture from many counties of Han Chinese, Xiang, and Hu peoples. They all joined in the uprising and marched to the west end of Tong Pass, while many of the civilians escaped to Hanzhong via Ziwu Valley. In this moment, Liu Zhang wanted to marry a daughter to Ma Chao to secure his borders, but was advised against it. Ma Chao is courageous, but he's inhumane and untrustworthy. In response to the mass rebellion, Cao Cao chose to lead his main army to Tong Pass, so the rebels would concentrate their defences around the south bank and lower their guard around the west bank. He gave strict orders to his generals: the soldiers west of the pass are capable and high-spirited, erect strong fortifications and don't engage them in battle. General who stabilizes the west, Tao Ren, was assigned to command the defences at Tong Pass, while Cao Cao made his way there. Xu Huang was sent to pacify Fenyin County in Heidong Commandery to prevent the rebellion from spreading, so he gave meat and wine to the people and let them pray to their ancestors. When Cao Cao arrived at Tong Pass, the officers and generals would gossip. The Guanxi soldiers are warlike, and they specialize in using long spears. Only an elite vanguard force can stop them. Cao replied, "I am in charge of the war, not the rebels. The flow of the battle is controlled by me, not the enemy. They may be skilled in using long spears, but I will not give them the opportunity to strike. Gentlemen, just watch." It was unwise to fight through Tong Pass, so Cao Cao looked to the nearby rivers for a safer approach. He consulted Xu Huang for advice, who wanted to lead an elite vanguard force to secure the crossings along the river for a surprise attack. He led 4,000 troops alongside Zhu Ling from the south bank of the river into Heidong Commandery, where he quietly established a bridgehead at the Puban crossing. They then sailed across the river at night and started pitching up camps on the lightly defended riverside. The two generals quickly occupied the immediate area so that the rebels could not compete for it, but they didn't finish their fortifications. Liang Xing discovered their presence and attacked at night, so the planned secret attack into Huayin County was now thwarted. Xu Huang and Zhu Ling repelled Liang Xing, but now had to hold off against his 5,000 men until the main army could cross. The bulk of the main force had already left the south bank, leaving Cao Cao and his tiger warriors to bring up the rear. He was confident in his success, so he elected to stay behind with Zhu Chu and 100 of the tiger warriors until all others had crossed. With the southern bank essentially abandoned, Ma Chao led around 10,000 horsemen to engage the ships, which were also being slowed down by the strong currents of the rivers. Seeing the incoming enemy force, Cao Cao remained seated and kept his composure to stop his men from panicking, but Xu Chu said it was time to leave now and quickly ushered him to the boats. The Liang cavalry came with intense pressure, quickly shooting arrows down onto the boats in an effort to kill Cao, but he stayed seated and still refused to move. Xu Chu held up a saddle with his left hand to shield Cao Cao from the arrows, and also carried a sword in his right. Zhang He and the other officers saw that the situation was very critical, so they quickly led their lord away and forced him inside a ferry. When the boatsman was struck by an arrow, the ship started to capsize, so the soldiers clung onto the sides to save from falling in. Xu Chu slashed his sword at the rebels trying to board, but the ship became damaged. It swept along the southern bank and almost sank under its own weight, so Xu Chu threw the sword down, but kept hold of the saddle. He used his free hand to grab the barge pole, then pushed the ferry away from the ford down to safety. In this critical moment, a colonel named Ding Fei released all the cattle and horses, so the Guanxi soldiers immediately stopped fighting to try and capture whatever livestock they could lay their hands on. The officers across the river were all panicky once they lost sight of their lord, but many shared tears of joy when he reunited with them later. Cao laughed and remarked, "I was almost trapped by that little scoundrel today." Back across the river, Ma Chao told his men, "We should cross to the north to prevent his second crossing from Puan. In no more than 20 days his supplies will be exhausted and he'll be forced into retreat." Han Sui disagreed. "If we can wait for his forces to come back over, we can attack him mid-crossing. Isn't that a better plan?" The coalition agreed with Han Sui, so to prevent from being isolated, they retreated back to pitched camps along the Wei River in preparation for Cao's arrival. Xu Huang and Zhu Ling still held off against Liang Xing's unit as soldiers trickled across the river. Many were sent to assist the camp construction on the west bank, but they were building upon sand, so the perimeter walls were not very effective. When Cao Cao eventually crossed the river, the Liang forces would constantly rout his men. He knew he couldn't win with these conditions, so needed something to change. He showed his hand, choosing to display various weaknesses to the enemy in order to make them overestimate their ability. He had his men construct pontoon bridges to assist river crossing operations, and wooden fences for protection. The baggage carts were linked together, then he marched south along the riverbank and set up many decoys and ambushes to further distract the enemy. The rebel cavalry forces relentlessly attacked, but at least now they were being hit by the ambush troops. Whenever a rebellious warlord arrived, Cao would appear pleased, so the perplexed generals asked him why. The land within the passes is very broad. If each rebel kept to the difficult countryside, then it would take more than 2 years to settle them. Now they all appear together, and although they form a considerable force, none will take orders from another. They may have superior numbers, but they lack an accepted leader. As such, they can be defeated in one swift strike. I am happy because it makes my job much easier than I anticipated. With his great skill, Ma secretly planned to dash forward to capture Cao Cao at a discussion with Han Sui, but didn't dare make his move when they met. Even though he was confident in his own strength, he had heard the prowess of Xu Chu. "I've heard Lord Cao has a tiger marquis. Where would he be?" Cao turned and pointed at Xu Chu, who had been glaring at Ma Chao the entire time. Seeing the obstruction, he dismissed the idea of capturing Cao Cao, and both sides returned to their camps. Several days later, during the fighting, Xu Chu killed many enemies, so got promoted to a unique position, Military General Guard of the Household. The sandy terrain on the west bank made it difficult to build defences around the camps, so the ramparts were still lacking. Every time soldiers tried to cross the Wei River, they came under attack by Ma Chao's cavalry, so Cao crossed back sometime between October and November. Lu Gui suggested, "With this cold weather, we can mix water with the sand to construct walls which will freeze and be ready after one night." Heeding this advice, the soldiers worked all through the night constructing ice walls which were ready the next day. When the coalition forces next attacked, they were kept at distance by the walls, then they were struck by the ever-lingering ambush troops. Cao Cao still didn't allow his men to engage the enemy though, because his plan was to make the rebels overconfident. Seeing his highly defensive strategies one after another led the coalition leaders into believing a false sense of victory. They rode around repeatedly taunting and challenging their enemy to engage them in battle, but Cao Cao ignored them. Eventually, Ma Chao sued for peace with Cao Cao on 2 conditions. Firstly, Cao had to give up the northwest to them. Second, he had to grant them official titles. When they also offered royal hostages in exchange for peace, Cao took Xiachu's advice. That's it, divide them. He only pretended to accept their offer though, so they'd be at ease whilst he can prepare for the upcoming battle. When Han Sui later came to a meeting, he spoke with Cao Cao at close quarters. They were both on horseback side by side, but their steeds were facing opposite directions. They simply had a light-hearted conversation and spoke nothing of military affairs. They reminisced of their time together when they were colleagues in the old capital Luoyang and laughed loudly as if they were close friends. Yan Xing also came along to the meeting, who Cao pointed at before he left. Take good care of this filial son. When Han Sui returned to his camp and Ma Chao asked him what did Cao Cao say, he replied nothing worth repeating, so the other coalition members became suspicious. In Cao's camp, his subordinates warned him that the next time he meets with rebels, he might not be able to leave so easily. He agreed to their suggestion to build some wooden horses as barricades for next time. When Cao Cao went to meet with Han Sui again, he brought along 5,000 armoured horsemen and instructed them to arrange themselves in an impressive formation. Many other coalition leaders came along too this time, but they were in awe when they saw Cao's elite cavalry display their coordinated might. From behind the wooden barriers, Cao spoke to Han Sui once more. The other coalition members also greeted him warmly, while their soldiers pushed forward to get a closer look at him. Cao laughed. You wish to see how I look? I'm an ordinary person just like you. I don't have 4 eyes or 2 mouths, but I am more intelligent. Over the next few days, Cao Cao prepared to go to war by positioning his light troops at the front and his elite tiger and leopard cavalry at the back. At the same time, Xie Haiyuan and Zhu Ling led a separate force to pacify the D tribes in Yumi and Xi'an counties. Almost a week went by until a letter arrived at Han Sui's camp, which had several suspicious scribblings within. It was deliberately made to look like it had been tampered with, so when the other rebels saw it they thought Han Sui had made an alliance with Cao Cao. Thus, Xiachu's plan had worked, and the coalition splintered. A sudden crash of thunder leaves no time for one to cover his ears. Without any warning, Cao's light troops suddenly charged into the rebel camp, killing Cheng Yi and Li Kan in action. They wore the massive enemy army down for a long period of time, until the elite tiger cavalry followed up by attacking the flanks, forcing the surviving rebels into retreat. Zhang He was sent forward to pursue Ma Chao, while Han Sui escaped deeper into Liang province. When Han Sui fled, many of his followers abandoned him, but Chen Gongying remained loyal. Yang Xiu fortified Anding Commandery before it came under siege, which covered Ma Chao's retreat as he also escaped further west. Zhang He eventually received Yang Xiu's surrender, whereafter Cao Cao employed him, then Xu Huang, Xie Haiyuan and Zhu Ling rendezvoused with the main army at Anding. They later went on to pacify various counties and commanderies throughout Guanzhong, as Cao Cao gave up on the pursuit of Ma Chao and headed back to Yi. Upon his return, the families of the rebels were all put to death apart from Yan Xing's, due to the fact he was reluctant to join in with the rebellion. Han Sui lost all of his children and grandchildren, while Ma Chao wrote to Liu Bei. Over 200 members of my family were killed by Cao Cao. I only have my cousin Ma Dai left with me, so he will be the one to continue my family line.